Before we begin, if you want the full continuation of these stories, more uncensored 18+ Ancient BL content, extended scenes, and unlimited royal forbidden romance, you can join us on Patreon at SpicyAncientBL. YouTube does not allow us to show or monetize everything freely here, so the deeper and more intense versions are waiting for you there. You can find the link in the description and pinned comment. Now, let me tell you a story about fear, forbidden desire, and the terrible consequences of assigning a fearless scholar to a man everyone else believed was a demon. Imperial Prince Yanlin had survived 12 years on the bloodiest borders of the Empire, crushed 5 major rebellions, and once single-handedly held a mountain pass against an invading army for 3 days in the freezing rain. He was known across the continent as the Ghost Prince. He was 30 years old, impossibly tall, built like a weapon, and possessed a resting expression that made grown men forget how to breathe. When Prince Yanlin walked into the imperial court, ministers suddenly found the floorboards incredibly interesting. When he glanced at the royal guards, they began mentally writing their wills. He did not speak much. He did not smile at all. The last time someone saw him smile, a neighboring kingdom had mysteriously burned to the ground a week later. So, when the young emperor, Yanlin's nephew, decided that his terrifying uncle needed a personal archivist to soften his military temperament, the entire palace held a collective moment of silence for whoever was going to be assigned the job. Enter scholar Lin Yao. Lin Yao was 23. He possessed the face of a gentle deity, the slender frame of a poet, and an absolute terrifying immunity to intimidation. He had spent his life buried in the Imperial Library, entirely disconnected from military politics, and possessed a deep, almost frightening respect for rules, etiquette, and properly filed paperwork. The day they met was raining. Prince Yanlin had just returned from a minor border skirmish. He strode into his private palace study, his heavy ebony armor still dripping with rainwater, and, concerningly, a fair amount of blood. His right-hand man, Commander Chen, followed closely behind, already sweating from the sheer oppressive aura of his master. Sitting at the prince's mahogany desk, casually organizing military scrolls, was Lin Yao. Yanlin stopped. His dark eyes narrowed into a glare that had historically made enemy generals surrender on the spot. Lin Yao did not surrender. Lin Yao looked up, blinked perfectly calm amber eyes, and looked from the terrifying prince, to the muddy boots, to the pristine white carpet beneath them. "Your Highness," Lin Yao said. His voice was soft, melodic, and entirely unimpressed. "You are bleeding on the imperial rugs." Silence. Complete, devastating silence. Commander Chen stopped breathing. Outside the open doors, 2 heavily armed guards exchanged a look of pure horror. Nobody, absolutely nobody, spoke to the Ghost Prince about carpets. Prince Yanlin stared at the frail-looking scholar. "Excuse me?" "The rugs," Lin Yao pointed with a jade-tipped calligraphy brush. "They are imported silk. Bloodstains are notoriously difficult to remove from silk. Furthermore, the Imperial Code of Conduct, Volume 4, Chapter 2, clearly states that armor must be removed in the outer pavilion." Commander Chen closed his eyes. He is dead, the commander thought. This beautiful idiot is going to be executed, and I will have to clean it up. Prince Yanlin stepped closer. He towered over the desk, casting a massive, intimidating shadow over the young scholar. The air in the room grew heavy, dangerous. Yanlin leaned down, his face inches from Lin Yao's, smelling of rain, cold iron, and sandalwood. "Do you know who I am?" Yanlin whispered. His voice was a low, vibrating threat. Lin Yao looked back at him. He didn't flinch. He didn't look away. In fact, Lin Yao leaned just a fraction closer, examining the prince's jawline with academic curiosity. "You are Imperial Prince Yanlin. You are also tracking mud into my workspace. Please step back, Your Highness. You are blocking my light." The universe paused. Commander Chen braced himself for the explosion. He waited for the sword to be drawn. Instead, Prince Yanlin stared into those calm amber eyes for 3 long seconds. Then, slowly, unbelievably, he took a step back. "My apologies," Yanlin grunted. He turned and walked out of the room to take off his armor. Commander Chen swayed on his feet. The 2 guards outside the door actually fell to their knees. The legend of the Ghost Prince had just been shattered by a boy holding a paintbrush. That was day 1. By the end of the first month, the entire Northern Army residents had entered a state of collective psychological collapse. They had watched their prince command battlefields with ruthless efficiency. They had seen him ignore stab wounds. Yet none of this had prepared them for the surreal experience of watching their terrifying master sit quietly at a table while Lin Yao lectured him on his handwriting. "Your strokes are entirely too aggressive," Lin Yao sighed, reaching out and gently tapping Yanlin's wrist with his brush. You are writing a peace treaty, Your Highness, not declaring a blood feud. Soften your grip. Yanlin, the man who had crushed human skulls with his bare hands, obediently loosened his grip on the delicate bamboo brush. Like this? Yanlin asked, his voice rough. Better, Lin Yao murmured. Commander Chen, watching from the doorway, felt a sharp pain in his chest. Why is the prince asking for validation? He thought wildly. Why is the scholar correcting his posture? Why is everyone acting like this is normal? But it wasn't normal, because Prince Yanlin had a secret, a deep, heavy, forbidden secret that he was trying desperately to hide. He was hopelessly, completely, entirely mesmerized by Lin Yao. It had started as mere curiosity. Yanlin was used to people trembling before him, but Lin Yao never trembled. Lin Yao scolded him for skipping meals. Lin Yao forced him to drink bitter herbal tea for his old injuries. Lin Yao sat beside him reading late into the night, the soft glow of the candlelight painting the scholar's skin in warm gold. Yanlin found himself watching Lin Yao when the younger man wasn't looking. He noticed the way Lin Yao's long eyelashes fluttered when he read. He noticed the pale, elegant line of Lin Yao's neck when he tied his dark hair back. He noticed the soft, rhythmic sound of Lin Yao's breathing. It was dangerous. Yanlin was a creature of war. Lin Yao was a creature of peace. Yet, the prince found himself deliberately walking heavier so Lin Yao would notice him. He found himself staying in the library for hours just to smell the faint scent of lotus and old paper that clung to the scholar. Lin Yao, however, was painfully oblivious to the romantic tension, or so it seemed. In truth, Lin Yao was fighting his own internal war. Every time Yanlin leaned over his shoulder to look at a map, Lin Yao's heart would hammer violently against his ribs. The sheer physical heat radiating from the prince's broad chest, the deep rumble of his voice, the way Yanlin's dark, intense eyes seemed to strip away all of Lin Yao's defenses, it was overwhelming. But Lin Yao was a scholar. He knew his place. He was a common-born academic. Yanlin was royal blood. The gap between them was wider than the ocean. So Lin Yao hid his trembling hands under his wide silk sleeves and built a wall of rules, protocol, and strict etiquette to keep his heart safe. He thought he was doing a great job. He wasn't. One evening, during the heavy monsoon rains, Lin Yao fell asleep at his desk. He was exhausted from translating ancient texts. When he woke up hours later, the room was dark, except for a single candle. The chill of the rain was gone. Lin Yao shifted and realized there was a heavy weight over his shoulders. He looked down. It was Prince Yanlin's personal fur-lined cloak, the one reserved only for the royal family. Before Lin Yao could process this, a shadow moved in the corner of the room. Yanlin was sitting in a wide chair, a book in his hand, watching him quietly in the dim light. "You work too late," Yanlin said. His voice was a low rumble, softer than the rain hitting the roof. Lin Yao's breath hitched. He sat up, clutching the cloak. "Your Highness." "You shouldn't have given me this. It violates protocol." "Damn protocol," Yanlin replied smoothly. He stood up and slowly walked toward the desk. The sheer size of him in the dim candlelight made the room feel incredibly small. The air between them suddenly felt thick, charged with an invisible electricity. Yanlin stopped right in front of Lin Yao. He reached out. Lin Yao froze. He couldn't breathe. Yanlin's large, calloused hand, a hand that wielded a massive broadsword, gently brushed against Lin Yao's cheek, tucking a stray strand of hair behind his ear. His knuckles grazed Lin Yao's skin. The touch was burning hot. "You were shivering," Yanlin whispered, his dark eyes dropping to Lin Yao's lips for just a fraction of a second. "I do not like it when you shiver." Lin Yao's heart was beating so fast he thought he might die. He looked up into Yanlin's eyes and saw a hunger, a deep, silent desperation that terrified and thrilled him all at once. Lin Yao swallowed hard. "I should return to my quarters." Yanlin didn't move. He stayed close, his body heat wrapping around Lin Yao like a physical embrace. For a terrifying, beautiful moment, Lin Yao thought the prince was going to lean down and kiss him. But Yanlin stepped back, his jaw tight. "Go, before the rain worsens." Lin Yao fled. He practically ran down the corridor, his face burning, his chest heaving. And if you are enjoying this forbidden royal tension, remember, the extended and uncensored 18+ continuation of their story is available on Patreon at SpicyAncientBL. The link is in the description and pinned comment. The next morning, the palace court was thrown into chaos. The young emperor, attempting to secure the northern borders politically, announced his intention to arrange a marriage for Prince Yanlin. A princess from a neighboring kingdom was arriving next week. When the decree was read in the Great Hall, Commander Chen flinched. The court ministers cheered. Finally, the ghost prince would be settled. Lin Yao, standing quietly at the back of the hall with the other scholars, felt a cold, crushing weight drop into his stomach. A princess. Of course. That was the reality of the world. He looked toward the front of the hall. Prince Yanlin stood perfectly still, but Commander Chen, who knew his master better than anyone, was quietly backing away. Because Prince Yanlin wasn't looking at the emperor. He wasn't looking at the decree. Prince Yanlin was staring directly to the back of the hall. He was staring at Lin Yao. And Yanlin looked furious. For the next week, Lin Yao pulled away. He stopped visiting the prince's private study. He communicated only through official letters. When they crossed paths in the courtyards, Lin Yao would bow deeply, keeping his eyes on the ground, and quickly walk away. Yanlin's mood, as a result, descended into absolute darkness. The northern army suffered. Training exercises became brutal. Yanlin shattered 3 practice swords in 2 days. He glared at people so hard a visiting diplomat actually fainted in the courtyard. The entire estate felt like it was waiting for a thunderstorm to break. "Please," Commander Chen begged Lin Yao one afternoon, intercepting the scholar in the gardens. The commander looked like he hadn't slept in a week. "Please, just go talk to him. He is destroying the armory. He snapped a spear in half this morning because a guard sneezed." "I am busy, Commander," Lin Yao said quietly, though his eyes looked exhausted and red-rimmed. "And it is inappropriate for me to spend so much time with His Highness before his betrothal." Before Chen could argue, the sound of gongs echoed through the palace. The Lantern Festival had begun. That night, the palace gardens were illuminated by thousands of floating paper lanterns. The royal family and the court officials gathered to watch the fireworks. Lin Yao stood at the edge of the crowd, hiding in the shadows of a weeping willow tree, wanting only to disappear. He watched from afar as Prince Yanlin sat at the high table, dressed in formal ebony and gold silk, looking like a dark, untouchable god. Beside him sat the visiting princess. She was beautiful, smiling, trying to speak to him. Lin Yao felt a physical ache in his chest. He turned away to leave. But as he stepped deeper into the shadows of the gardens, the air shifted. The hairs on the back of Lin Yao's neck stood up. He had read enough military strategy to recognize the silence that preceded an ambush. 3 shadows dropped from the roof of the pavilion. Assassins. They weren't aiming for the emperor. They weren't aiming for the prince. They were aiming for the officials in the garden to cause chaos. One of them landed directly in front of Lin Yao, drawing a curved blade that glinted in the lantern light. Lin Yao stepped back, his heart stopping. He had no weapon. The assassin lunged. But before the blade could even come close, a massive blur of black and gold slammed into the assassin. It was Prince Yanlin. The ghost prince hadn't been paying attention to the princess at all. He had been watching the shadows where Lin Yao had disappeared. Yanlin moved with terrifying, brutal speed. He didn't even draw his sword. He caught the assassin's wrist, twisted it with a sickening crunch, and drove his knee into the man's chest, sending him flying backward into the stone wall. The other 2 assassins turned, realizing immediately they had made a severe career error. They charged at Yanlin. "Get behind me!" Yanlin roared at Lin Yao. Lin Yao stumbled back as Yanlin engaged the killers. It was over in seconds. Yanlin was a force of nature. But in the chaos, as the second assassin fell, the third threw a hidden poison dart. Yanlin saw it flying toward Lin Yao. Without a second thought, the prince threw his body in front of the scholar. A sharp thwack echoed in the dark. Yanlin let out a low grunt, his hand flying to his shoulder. "Your Highness," Lin Yao screamed, his mask of calm entirely shattering. Palace guards flooded the garden. The assassins were restrained, but Lin Yao saw nothing but the blood seeping through Yanlin's gold-embroidered silk. An hour later, chaos ruled the palace, but inside Yanlin's private chambers, the doors were locked. Lin Yao had barred the royal physicians from entering. "I know poisons," Lin Yao had snapped, his voice shaking with a terrifying authority that made the physicians step back. "I will do it." Now the room was silent except for the heavy rain beating against the windows. Yanlin sat on the edge of his bed. His upper robes had been stripped away, revealing a chest heavily scarred from years of war. Lin Yao stood in front of him, his hands covered in blood, carefully extracting the dart and applying a thick herbal paste to the wound to draw out the poison. Lin Yao's hands were shaking violently. He was crying, not loud, dramatic sobs, but silent, steady tears that fell from his amber eyes and dropped onto Yanlin's bare skin. Yanlin sat perfectly still, ignoring the pain in his shoulder. He was entirely focused on the young scholar trembling in front of him. "Stop crying," Yanlin murmured roughly. "You are an idiot," Lin Yao choked out, his voice cracking. He pressed a white cloth to the wound, stepping closer, his legs weak. "You are an absolute reckless idiot. Why did you jump in front of it? You are the Imperial Prince. You cannot risk your life for a scribe." "You are not just a scribe," Yanlin said. Lin Yao looked up. They were inches apart. Yanlin's bare chest was rising and falling heavily. The heat between them was suffocating. The scent of blood, herbs, and sandalwood filled the small space. "You are betrothed," Lin Yao whispered, his voice breaking. He tried to pull his hands back, to step away from the intoxicating closeness of the prince's bare skin. But Yanlin moved faster. His uninjured arm shot out, his large hand wrapping around Lin Yao's waist, pulling him hard against his chest. Lin Yao gasped, dropping the cloth. His hands landed flat against Yanlin's bare burning chest to steady himself. He could feel the frantic, heavy pounding of the prince's heart against his palms. "I am not betrothed," Yanlin said, his voice dropping to a dangerous low whisper. His dark eyes locked onto Lin Yao's, blazing with an intensity that made Lin Yao's knees weak. "I refuse the decree." Lin Yao's eyes widened. You defied the emperor?" "I would defy the heavens," Yanlin breathed, his gaze dropping to Lin Yao's lips again. "I let you pull away from me this past week, because I thought I was protecting you from my reputation, from the darkness I carry. They call me a monster, Lin Yao." "You are not a monster," Lin Yao whispered fiercely, his fingers unconsciously curling into Yanlin's skin. "I am," Yanlin said softly. He slowly raised his hand, his thumb tracing the soft curve of Lin Yao's trembling lower lip. "Because right now, all I want to do is lock these doors and never let you leave. I do not want the princess. I do not want the throne. I only want you." Lin Yao's breath shuddered. The rules, the etiquette, the imperial codes, everything he had used to protect his heart vanished in an instant. The slow-burn tension of months, the stolen glances, the accidental touches, it all boiled over in the candlelit room. Lin Yao looked up into the desperate, hungry eyes of the most feared man in the empire. "Then keep me," Lin Yao whispered. Yanlin let out a ragged breath. He pulled Lin Yao entirely into his lap. The scholar let out a soft sound as Yanlin's arm tightened around him possessively. Their faces were so close they were breathing the same air. Yanlin's nose brushed against Lin Yao's jaw, inhaling the sweet scent of lotus, his lips grazing the sensitive skin of Lin Yao's neck. Lin Yao tilted his head back, his fingers tangling into Yanlin's dark hair, his heart surrendering completely to the terrifying, beautiful warmth of the man holding him. Outside the room, Commander Chen stood guard in the hallway. The Prime Minister came running down the corridor, panicked. "Commander," the minister yelled, "where is the prince? The Emperor demands to know if he will accept the marriage." Commander Chen looked at the locked door. He heard the muffled sound of a very heavy, very emotional conversation happening inside, followed by a sudden, sharp silence that was entirely too intimate for anyone to interrupt. Commander Chen calmly drew his sword and planted it into the floorboards. "The prince is currently engaging in a matter of national security," Chen said with a perfectly straight face. "He is unavailable." "But the princess—" "The princess," Chen interrupted smoothly, "should probably start packing." 6 months later, the empire experienced a shock that historians would struggle to explain for centuries. The terrifying ghost prince Yanlin, the nightmare of the north, had officially taken a male consort. A young, fiercely stubborn scholar who was currently running the northern army residence with an iron fist wrapped in blue silk. The soldiers, who had once lived in terror of Yanlin, now lived in entirely different terror. "Your Highness," Lin Yao would call out across the courtyard, holding a clipboard. "You skipped your tea again." And the entire army would watch in stunned silence as Prince Yanlin, a man who had once conquered a city in 2 days, froze mid-sword swing, immediately dropped his weapon, and walked over to obediently drink his tea. "Yes, my heart," Yanlin would say smoothly, completely ignoring the traumatized expressions of his generals. Commander Chen eventually retired early, citing emotional exhaustion. The young emperor often visited, deeply amused that his terrifying uncle had been completely tamed. But late at night, when the palace was quiet and the rain fell against the roof, there was no fear, no politics, and no army. There was only the gentle glow of the candlelight, the scent of old paper and sandalwood, and the heavy, undeniable devotion in the eyes of a man who had finally found his peace in the hands of the scholar who loved him. If you want the next part, the uncensored continuation, and more unlimited 18+ Ancient Royal BL stories, come join Spicy Ancient BL on Patreon. The link is waiting for you in the description and pinned comment.